to Spirit of the Midwest, a show featuring interviews and stories that expose the deep values and pride found in the heart of America. My name is CK Hicks, and I'm here today with my co-host, Wesley Noble.
And today is special for two reasons. The first reason is that we have a live show today, and the mic that we're using is actually sponsored by our good friends at Mostly Serious. So I want to thank my friends at Mostly Serious for sponsoring the podcast today. I've seen them at creative events around town, so I can personally say that they're a great bunch. I would definitely recommend for any interactive project. They are headquartered here in Springfield, Missouri, with a hub in San Francisco, and they design and build beautiful online properties with a focus on e-commerce sites, software apps, and completely custom marketing sites. With all their talent and the down-to-earth traits that have companies on the coast turning to the Midwest these days, Mostly Serious is a perfect sponsor for our show. On a side note, I've spent a lot of time talking with Jared, who is a partner and head designer at Mostly Serious, and he's told me that real collaboration with a client is the best way, he might say it's the only way, to create interactive tools that are both beautiful and entirely beneficial to users. He's said many times that nailing an experience for users is how Mostly Serious makes money for its clients. So yeah, if you need an online store or a news site or an app for mobile or desktop, and you're looking for a great working relationship as you grow, I can confidently point you to Mostly Serious. But you should definitely check them out for yourself. Head on over to mostlyserious.io or follow them on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at username mostly_serious. Thank you very much to them.
Yeah, thank you very much.
The second reason that today is special is because we are here today with Logan Pyle. Logan is a designer and all-around creative guy from our hometown of Springfield, Missouri, and super excited to have you with us.
Thanks,
today,
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so it's nice to finally meet you. I know you and Wesley have been friends for a while, and we've actually never run into each other in person, so this is kind of a fun way to do it.
It's true.
We're excited to try out the live interview, and we'll just sit and talk for a little bit, and we'll see how it plays.
Yep. There's magic in the air right now.
Definitely.
There's definitely magic in there. So if you could give us a little bit of your backstory of how you, kind of like what you're doing right now, and then a brief process of how you got there, or if you've hit, things that you've had to overcome recently, or things. So just, we try and get a general snapshot for people of who we're talking with. So
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So for the last, I think, 4 or 5 months, I'm an in-house designer for a church in town. So I do all of most of their design stuff. I do a little bit of video work, some editing, that type of work. But before that, I actually worked in an accounting type job for about 3 to 4 years, which is hilarious because I failed algebra twice in high school, I think, which was awesome. So I've had my fair share of non-cool design jobs over the years, but no, I grew up in Indiana. Actually, I've lived in almost every Midwest state other than Illinois, which is okay because I don't want to offend anybody from Illinois, but it's one of the most boring states I've ever been in my life.
I don't know, Iowa's pretty bad.
That's probably true. I haven't been to Iowa. There's another state.
There you go.
No, so I grew up in Indiana. I lived there until I was 19, I think, is when I moved. Grew up in Indiana. I was always kind of the weird kid in high school. Like, I didn't fit in, but I also fit in with everybody a little bit. Which was funny because I was wearing like girl jeans and really tight clothes because I was in bands, and I was the weird kid. I was like the weird kid in every movie that, I don't know.
Just stick out.
Yeah, you just kind of stick out like a sore thumb.
Hipster, perhaps?
No, hipsters weren't a thing yet. At the time,
the original hipster.
I was a hipster before it was cool. I think we were called scene kids. So we went to lots of shows and listened to bands and played in bands and things. Like the original hipsters.
There you go. That's before they needed a label.
Yeah, we didn't believe in labels. No, I did that. I was in bands for probably 3 or 4 years and kind of toured around a little bit and played shows in different places. And then that's actually what led to me getting into design, because when I went to college, they didn't have a design program, so I was going for a bachelor's of arts degree or something like that with a lot of kind of art-focused courses. But my roommate at the time was like, hey, have you ever heard of this thing called Photoshop? And I hadn't, so he gave me this stolen copy of it that he had. And full disclaimer, I use like purchased licensed software now.
Most of us started on hacked versions.
Stolen everything. So I had this stolen copy of Photoshop. I didn't really know what it was. I don't even remember what I was doing with it at first, but eventually I started having people in other bands that we were playing with and people in my own band asking if I could design things like a flyer for a show or like a poster or a t-shirt design or something. So I just started kind of learning as I went. Like I wasn't learning Photoshop in school. I was learning Photoshop at like 2 a.m. with Mountain Dew in my dorm room, like every young aspiring designer does. Right. So I learned Photoshop that way, and that's kind of that was my entryway. And then after like a couple years of doing that, I realized maybe I should move somewhere and go to school for this because it's something I enjoy doing. So I moved to Ohio, and I lived in a small town that was kind of in between Dayton and Cincinnati. I went to school in Cincinnati for design school, and it was good. I didn't actually finish. I quit during my very last quarter because I was spending like $12,000 a quarter, which adds up to a lot of money at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. And I was learning more just from doing like little side projects and reading blogs online and things than I was learning in my classes, and I just didn't want the extra debt, so I like a genius quit right before I was finished.
Nice.
And then I stayed in Ohio for a while, and then I met my now wife, who lived in Springfield and grew up in Springfield, and that's how I ended up moving to Springfield so that we could get married. Which is a lot of things that just happened in 3 minutes of talking.
No, yeah, that's cool. It's a neat snapshot to see.
Yeah,
that's what we want.
Yeah, totally.
A quick intro.
And then like once you got to Springfield, this is part of what is just so interesting about your story is like when you got to Springfield, what has been your journey to now working at a creative job at a church?
Sure. When I first moved here, I was working at a Starbucks, which is perfect because I was a hipster wearing skinny jeans and stuff.
Perfect.
The original hipster.
Yeah, that's right. That's gonna be my episode title. And
I'm
gonna forever shame me. I think.
I've been debating in my head since you said it. That's probably mean.
No, I would expect nothing less. No, I was working at a Starbucks in Ohio, so I just transferred to one here. And I think I was only there for like 3 months or something. And then I got a call center job because I was about to get married and needed to make a little bit more money so that I could help provide for my wife, who was working at the time still. But it's expensive being alive in the United States of America. So I had a call center job. I hated it. It was miserable. I had to talk on the phone all day, and I'm super introverted, so talking to some random strangers on the phone who hated me all day was just like that was a nightmare. Like I still look back at that and just kind of shudder a little bit. We thought, my wife and I kind of refer to it as like the dark times, because I would come home from work and just like want to crash and not talk and just get in like a little hole.
Does that affect the way you talk on the phone to other people?
Oh yeah.
I still hate. I've forever hated talking on the phone. Like even when my wife and I were long distance boyfriend girlfriend when I lived in Ohio, still like I had to fight hard to talk for like an hour on the phone, and that's the only way we could. And she knows that, so it's not going to embarrass her. That's like the only way we could interact. So I had to like, all right, I just got to push through this. I can do it. Like, hype myself up to talk on the cell phone.
Is video calling better for you? Like Skyping?
A little bit. Anything other than face to face is just uncomfortable for me.
Which is why this is perfect.
This is perfect.
And I appreciate that, because there's kind of a lost art of going in and sitting down, shaking someone's hand, looking them in the eye, and saying, "Hi, how are you doing today?"
Right.
And especially for stuff where you're trying to resolve issues or something, it's just there's no substitute for face to face. And it, as much as we like to live in the digital culture and progress forward, with all the fancy communication tools, when you really need something, it's really nice to just sit down. And so I love rediscovering that in different ways all the time,
Yep.
And I hope we never get to a point in our society where that goes away completely, because it's really important.
Yeah.
I hope not either, because I'll probably have zero friends.
Right. I will just literally sit at home and not talk to anybody.
People will be like, hey, I'm going to Snapchat you something real fast. I'm like, why don't you just come over and talk to me, please? What were we even
So sorry,
talking about?
your story. Starbucks, call center.
Call center. Yes. So I ended up getting fired from the call center, actually. I think
Wow.
I kind of messed up a little bit, but I think it was more so like, you need to fire this person or I'm going to sue your company or something along those lines. Yeah, lots of fun.
Wow.
So I got fired from my job. We'd been married like 6 months, and I had to call my wife because we only had one car at the time. I was like, hey, can you come pick me up before work? And she's like, why? What's wrong?
Oh, no.
Well, funny thing is, I just got fired. And she's like,
Oh no.
so that was fun. But ended up, I had another job within a couple months, or like a month, I think. After that, I had a design job for one of the big hospitals in town at their print shop. So I was doing that for, I think, 9 months to a year, somewhere along there. But I didn't have insurance at the time, so we'd been married for a few years. We wanted to start trying to have kids, so I decided that I needed to get a job that would provide insurance for me so we could have a child. Because that would cost like $300 million without having insurance. It's expensive enough with it, but no. So I got a job at it's kind of a call center environment, but I wasn't working in a call center. I was doing kind of like low-level accounting work for a travel company. And all things considered, it was a pretty good job, but it still wasn't the thing that I enjoyed doing. So I had a lot of hard days there, just not getting to do what I wanted to do and what I felt entitled to do because it's what I wanted.
Sure.
So I stayed there for 3 to 4 years, and then about the last year of it, I started actually pursuing design jobs at other places. So I would apply, interview, and then almost all of them I would get pretty close to getting hired somewhere, and then at the last minute I wouldn't get it, which led to more discouragement from working in a place like that. But eventually I got out, and now I'm doing something enjoyable, and now I can look back on all those kind of miserable dark years and kind of be grateful for it.
Yeah, so like as you were going through, kind of slogging through that stuff, and I know at some point you turn around or you come home and you go, oh, that's why I need to have a job.
Right.
I have a wife.
Right.
And I want to have kids, and so you do whatever you have to do. But were there things that you were doing in your off time to kind of keep yourself motivated and remember, like, I am a designer.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, no, I for about I think it was a couple months before my son was born. He was born in 2013. I started getting freelance requests, mostly through Instagram, which is a very 2015 thing to say. But I had been posting these little like hand lettering things that I had been making on Instagram, and eventually I started getting freelance requests through it, which was really cool. And I had no idea what it meant. I was like kind of figuring out how to price people, and it was a weird time, but it was nice because I ended up meeting other designers and being able to network with people that don't even live in Missouri, and have developed some cool friendships through that and stuff. So yeah, I had to do something at home during my off time to keep me grounded in the fact that I do enjoy doing something other than what I do for a living.
Remember who you are.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, I had bills to pay, and I literally had mouths to feed. My wife quit her job when my son was born, so it was me, and we were writing off whatever money I was making, so I had a responsibility to do that. But at the same time, I didn't want to do that forever, so I was trying to doing something on the side that I could eventually, my goal was to start just freelancing full time at some point, and I think I probably could have, but
it's hard.
Yeah, it's hard, and I just like the emotional weight of thinking that there could be a month where we don't make enough money because I didn't get enough jobs coming in or something just freaked me out enough that I decided it wasn't for me.
I can understand that. And I didn't have a wife and child, but I freelanced for several years, and yeah, you learn real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a big difference between being productive and a day where you don't get as much time.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, like, there would be, because there were months where I would bring in a lot doing freelance, and there were months where I would bring in like $600.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
man.
3 humans can't live on $600.
But it's cool because it kind of teaches you about the value of a day's hard work.
Oh, yeah.
And just making sure that you stay focused and,
Right.
and having those client relations and being able to interface with people, and and that's one of the things that we usually ends up coming out in our conversation with people is, you live in the Midwest, what about living and working in the Midwest is if you've worked with people from other places or you've been other places, you know, what is it about the kind of humble hard work, or like Brandon Wright used the term sweat equity. You know, what is it about this place that kind of makes people a little hardier and humbler when they interact with people, and that shows, you know, and it teaches us how to do things with other people.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I was freelancing, it was crucial at that point because I was learning how to interact with clients, which is really just interacting with, you know, whatever you're doing for a living, it's interacting with the person that you're serving.
Right.
So when I got the job that I have now, I felt a lot more comfortable with you know, I have a lot of freedom at work. You know, it's mostly like as long as I'm getting my projects done and no one's waiting on me. You know, if I want to work certain hours one day, work certain hours a different day, it's okay. But it helped me learn how to be my own boss really well and manage my time and, you know, manage multiple projects at a time and everything like that. So it's unparalleled in how it's helped me and, you know, kind of kept me grounded where I am now.
Very good.
Was that like a tricky transition from being at a place where there's like very strict rules and like this dictatorial leadership?
It was incredibly weird because I went from working in an environment where I had to clock in at, you know, exactly the same time every morning, and if I had clocked in 5 minutes late, I could get in trouble, and you know, I had like scheduled lunch breaks and breaks throughout the day or whatever. So it was like a night and day difference. Like my first day at my new job, I sat down in my office like, okay, now I have to decide what I'm going to do for the entire day. And because I didn't have anybody telling me like, okay, these are your numbers you have to hit today, you have to do this, this, and this. So but again, like the freelance piece, like I felt comfortable and I wasn't terrified of that because I'd been managing my own projects for 2 years and had developed my like personal workflow systems and everything to where I felt comfortable doing it.
Yeah, and it teaches you a lot about being, like you see on resumes or job applications, you know, must be a self-starter or manages your own projects well, things like that. And I had a really good talk with a friend in Texas a few years ago about that, and we were sharing thoughts on, you know, when you work for yourself, you have to manage things because it's the only way you're going to get paid.
Right.
But then when you're in another job, you realize that you really need those qualities.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's something that there's something about this area of the country where once you learn that skill and you just think, oh, I'm just doing this, you know, on the phone or over Skype or over email or whatever. But if you can kind of visualize that same humble interaction, you know, then it does go a long way, and it really does make you attractive to, like, as much as people don't talk about it, it really does make you attractive to employers.
Yeah,
when
absolutely.
you can sit down and talk to them. And I do interviewing as part of my job, and it's really funny to find the people who are totally cool with just sitting down and talking, as opposed to like, well, so I make things. Like, that's great. So, you know, and it's just like, you know, just to have a conversation with the person.
Right.
And I think it's, you know, like you said, it's amazing the difference that makes.
It kind of affects your whole life too, because I mean, it's kind of the same idea. Like if I stopped working, my family would get evicted from our home and we wouldn't have food to eat. So it's kind of that mentality where like, I have to do this because if I don't do this, nothing will happen. Like it's, you know, we have to make X amount of money per month. If I'm not working, we don't make that much money. So it's just, I think that's kind of like the Midwest mentality is like, you have a job to do and you have to get it done because people are depending on you. Which is good because I think it, like, you know, like you said, it makes you really well-rounded and makes you, you know, able to do whatever type of work really well.
That's really cool.
Totally. Could we talk a little bit about your thoughts on social media? And like you talked a little bit about how Instagram had been impactful in your freelance career and how your views have changed over the years of using social media. Because we've talked a little bit about that before. But
so like Wesley said, I Instagram was kind of, you know, where all of my freelance work was coming from for the most part. I was getting a little bit from like Dribble and mostly just those two. So I had to pour a ton of time, you know, creating and posting and sharing things on Instagram to help keep driving that. I mean, it wasn't just so I could keep making money. Like I genuinely enjoyed what I was doing and what I was writing about and sharing and everything. But part of it too was that, I eventually didn't want to be doing what I was doing for a living, so I was putting a lot of energy into maintaining that consistency and everything on social media. But honestly, it caught up with me after a while. I think it was like last April or May, we went on a family vacation, and I just completely unplugged for a week and pretty much just put my phone on like airplane mode and put it in a drawer down in the condo where we were staying. And it was incredible. Like, I got back and I couldn't find the strength in me to keep pushing myself to do stuff on social media, because I realized that my son was starting to grow up, and he was getting to the point where he was going to notice if I wasn't around all the time. Yep. So I didn't want to come home from working 8 hours at my full-time job and then work, because at the time I would come home, I would work 6 to 2:30, like 6 a.m. to 2:30 in the afternoon at my job, and then I would come home and I would usually do freelance stuff, like 3 o'clock until dinner time, and then after dinner I would work until about 11 or 12, and then go to bed and wake up at like 4:30 the next morning and start all over again. And it was just awful. It was too much. I got really burnt out, and that's what that vacation revealed to me, is that I was doing way too much, and I didn't want my son to grow up thinking like, yeah, Dad was home, but he wasn't really around. So I wanted to be more intentional with my family and actually be present if I was home. So I was still doing some freelance jobs, but they dwindled down after a while, because I wasn't putting all the energy into, hopefully attracting freelance jobs. But it was okay, because it was a lot more restful, not fighting so incredibly hard for the American dream like I was before. I think it was exhausting. And
so has your view of the American dream changed over time, or is it just become more solidified in going home and like, hey, I have a wife, I have a child, we have a roof, we have some food,
right? It did kind of solidify, but I also started realizing that maybe it wasn't the best way to live life. Like, constantly pursuing the next best job, constantly pursuing making more money, constantly, all these things that at the end of the day, when I'm 90 years old, probably aren't going to matter that much. Like, I had this thought one day of, this is incredibly morbid, but this is kind of like this is the state of mind that I live in most days. Someday I'll be laying on my deathbed, and I don't think when I'm laying on my deathbed I'm going to regret not being on Twitter or Instagram more. I'm not going to regret not working more freelance jobs. I don't think I'm going to regret not making more money. But if I'd continued living that way, I think I would have definitely regretted missing out on so many sweet moments with my family that I was, holed away in my office, missing out on. So it just started kind of reshaping the way that I think about work and the way that I think about social media stuff and just technology in general. I'm all for technology. I'm a geek, and it drives my wife nuts because I constantly want to buy things. But it's weird because we're like the first generation that it's really affecting, I think, at least in this capacity where we're all like hyper connected constantly and all of that. So I think 50 years from now, it's going to be really weird to see a lot of the repercussions of this time.
It is, and it's one of the funny things about, you add in all of these extra handy tools and services and ways to connect with people, and I tell people I kind of grew up, you can't see I'm making air quotes, but grew up on forums, back in the early, 1999, 2000, 2001, and then for 10 years straight, that was the main way I interacted with people on the internet, before I found Twitter and everything.
You mean MySpace? And Zanga and LiveJournal.
Yeah, it's LiveJournal. Yeah. But there was what was the other one?
Friendster.
Friendster. Thank you.
I don't even know what that is.
Early, Facebook startup type thing. But anyway, but all these services and things. But the goal of it was you get to meet people.
Right.
And you get to and it was really neat because I learned a lot that way. I got a lot of neat exposure.
Sure.
And we'd work on stuff together. But then it starts to permeate different areas of life, and now we have all these wearables and everything else, and I think they're fantastic.
Sure.
I'm super fascinated by it, but there are days when I was someone will text me and then email me and then do something else, and I'm like, look, I'm just not don't want to talk right now.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
and that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't give you the front door access.
I
Like,
know.
you don't have a key to my house. You
Oh,
know?
yeah, exactly.
And so it's I listen to a guy who talks a lot about the balance between those things, and one of the things he says is there's so much intrinsic access that we give to one another.
Yep.
And you know, we have to get through our heads that because you have my email address does not mean you can contact me any time of day.
Right.
And there's that barrier that we have to remember is like we have to have respect for the people.
Exactly.
And you know, like when texting first came out, I thought it was the worst thing in the world.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, this is so interpersonal. I hate it, you know? But now I love it because I can answer it on my timetable.
Yep.
And it's something that you can do, you know, like when you have a moment.
Right.
And so if you're dying, don't text me.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. I know. My wife and I have had a lot of conversations about that because I used to just put my phone on airplane mode at night, and then like we had she had a death in her family, and I didn't get the phone call from her parents because they were calling me so I could tell her. So her phone starts ringing, and then our doorbell rings. So after that, I was like, maybe I'll just use like do not disturb, so that way people can still call me. But yeah, I don't know, we're pretty big proponents on controlling how technology is used in our home because we don't want to end up being the family that's like the MediaCom commercial where everybody's like staring at it's like everybody in your house can have their own device and their own streaming service. It's like, I don't want that. Like, I'd rather us all be sitting in the same room, like interacting with one another and having fun and not just watching Netflix all separately on our own devices and headphones.
Exactly.
Nothing says family quite like everyone doing their own thing alone.
With headphones.
With headphones.
Oh, man.
No, that's good though.
So we are a group of introverts.
Oh yeah.
Like hardcore. All of us are pretty hardcore.
There's a
introverts.
lot of introvert happening in this room right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, CK, you've not taken the Myers-Briggs.
What? An introvert that hasn't taken the Myers-Briggs?
No, you know, I'm sure at some point I have. I do not remember where I landed. I know for a fact that I trend introvert on any kind of test.
Yeah.
And I definitely recharge better in private, you know, rather than with people. And I people watch more than I feed off of, you know, the energies. So I know I'm definitely there. I don't know the rest though. So I guess I should have done my homework.
Well, I know I took them.
I'm so disappointed.
I know. Yeah, we've had this conversation like many times. I've just kind of moved on. I'm not even mad about it anymore. But I took the Myers-Briggs like a year and a half ago.
Changed his life.
It did. It changed my life.
Hey,
it was
This is
crazy. Like looking at the results, like I showed like my family, and they were all like, "Oh my gosh, it's Wesley!" You know,
it reads you like a book.
It really does. So I got INFJ, which is, I don't even know exactly what it is.
Wait.
We just did a high five.
There
There you go.
I had to make sure
it.
I got picked up on the mic.
Yeah. And found out not too long after that Logan is also an INFJ, which is crazy because that's like supposedly 1% of the population. So like, when did you take the Myers-Briggs, and has that affected anything for you?
I think I took it about a year ago. I had taken it a really long time ago, but I have no idea what it said, and I probably didn't really care at the time. But I took it about a year ago, and it said I was an INFJ. So then I just started kind of reading about that personality type, and it was almost haunting, like how well it read me. I was oh my gosh, that's totally why that happens. That's why I think that way. That's why I act that way. But it was kind of good because it pointed out like my blind spots that I couldn't see, and I was like, oh. And then I had my wife take it too, and she is ISFJ, so we're like, I don't think we're technically supposed to be compatible, but we love each other and we love being married. So she's really close to the same type of personality as me, but she's more sensing, and I'm intuitive. And we started reading about like both of our personality types side by side, and we could like pinpoint like, that's why we get in that argument all the time. That's why we get in that argument all the time. That's why we get in that argument all the time. But it is cool because it kind of helps you learn how to interact with other people. Even if you don't have to know everybody's personality type, but if you kind of pick up on, you know, how a person behaves, how they carry themselves, you can kind of, you know, learn how to best interact with them in a way that's encouraging for them and, you know, doesn't create conflict, you know, in as much as you can.
Mm-hmm. I think it even made me feel more secure with my own personality, just knowing that actually having like test results in front of me saying that I am I have a very strong sense of empathy, and like just to know that, and to like I think it protects me going into situations where I know that I'm really going to be stressed here because of that. I think it does help me.
It definitely helps you understand yourself better and why you think the way you think and act the way you act and everything like that.
Yeah,
it's helpful.
So how does an INFJ when you're in kind of going back to your thoughts on social media and even just that person-to-person interaction, like you say, that you enjoy sitting down and talking with people one-on-one.
Yeah.
How does, even though you're, if you're like me, massively introverted,
sure, but
this is so much more natural than interacting with some, even though, I love tweeting people and forums and Reddit and all that kind of stuff, but still there's some weird thing about being in person, even though I'm a drastically better in private, to recharge. There's still something like we have to sit down and talk at some point because that's what humans do. So how does that? Have you had any like reconciling with that over time of realizing this is how I recharge, but this is what kind of makes me a person, is, talking in person.
Yeah. Well, it like specifically in regards to social media, if I spend too much time on social media getting, technically it is a personal connection, but at the same time it's not, because it's through a typeface rather than using your vocal cords. So if I spend too much time on social media, I just kind of get inundated with things about other people's lives that frankly I shouldn't even care about. Like just, not the person that's like, I just had a sandwich for lunch, but just like constantly being bombarded with what everyone's doing, what they're up to, the things that they're honored to work on, and all that. It gets really overwhelming after a while, and it crushes me a little bit. So I have to like take I take weekly days where I just don't interact on social media at all. I just don't open Twitter. I don't do anything because it helps me kind of reconnect to the real world and stay grounded in reality.
Yeah.
Is that a predetermined day for you?
It's usually Thursdays.
Really?
Usually Thursdays.
Good to know.
That's cool.
So I can bug you on Thursday.
Hey, you can bug me, but I won't see anything.
Yeah. Well, see, that's neat though, because then there is something about that disconnect that, or the intentional disconnect, where. So I'm struggling to put this into words, but like when you're talking with people online, how there's that I don't remember the name of the limit, but there's a supposed limit to how many actual friendships and relationships you can have.
Right.
In our society, it's very simple to go online and have 700 followers, or whatever. You follow 8,000 people on Twitter or whatever, and you try and keep up with everybody. And then, I hear different people say this all the time. They'll hear that like, Will Smith's dog died or whatever else, and it crushes them.
I know.
And they're like, oh no.
Oh, you know Will? How do you know Will?
How do you? Yeah, he's like, oh, you met him? And it's so funny how we live so vicariously through these services, but it's this right here that connects us as people, and this also that has the benefit of limiting the number of people that we can care about at one time.
Right.
And when I'm scrolling through a feed and I see 20 things by 20 people, emotionally, physically, I think we're starting to see, and like you said, you and I are kind of that generation that saw this change. Yep. And now I kind of consider Wesley the second generation. So like the Wesley
generations have shortened, I think.
Yeah, like in the next or half generation or whatever that is now integrating with more of it, and we're starting to see the physical and emotional limits of like how many people we can actually connect to on a reasonable level. Yeah. And then we go home and we wonder why we're like depressed and tired.
Exactly.
It's like we've drained ourselves, and so I think you might be onto something.
Well, like I think it was it's probably about a year. It was around that time that I had gone on vacation and come back. I just kind of left everything social media wise for a while. I think it was like 6 months or something, maybe. I don't really remember. If somebody goes back and checks, which that's sad in and of itself, but if somebody goes back and checks and I'm wrong, I'm sorry.
You can tweet at them on Thursday.
Yeah, exactly. You just send me a tweet on Thursday and I won't even care. But no, I stopped doing anything social networking related, and it was it was incredible. Like it was really refreshing. So then when I came back into doing it again, because it is, I wouldn't say it's a crucial part of life, but for the type of work that I do and just being alive in 2015, it's helpful to be, present on those things a little bit. So I came back, but I made these rules for myself where I was only going to follow X amount of people on every network. So like on Twitter, I won't follow more than 100 people, or on Instagram, I won't follow more than 50 people.
That's tough.
It's not as hard as you think. Like, it was at first, because I had to unfollow like half the people I was following, but it was really good for me, because now even if I check Twitter, it can't last for more than like 5 minutes, because there's only going to be like 50 tweets over the last day that I haven't seen or whatever.
Oh, that's neat.
Which is nice. It's helpful, other than when there's like, something big happening in the news and then it explodes, because that's what the internet does. So that was helpful. And then my wife and I actually, we've been creating like rules for ourselves at home for how we interact with our devices and stuff. And I was having a hard time with constantly feeling the need to check Twitter and stuff at home. So now I had created a rule for myself where if I'm home, I just take my phone and put it on my dresser and just leave it, unless I'm like expecting a phone call, or like right now we have a family member that's really sick, so we've kept our phones on us, or at least like out somewhere where you can hear them if they ring or whatever. Do that. We leave them in a stationary place so we're not constantly feeling like we need to reach in our pocket and check it or whatever. And then on the weekends, we don't do any social networking at all, so we can kind of pull back and have really good, solid, genuine family time together, and not constantly feel like we need to see what so-and-so is doing on Facebook, or what quizzes they took, or what games they want me to play, or...
Exactly.
That's cool.
Don't even get me started on Facebook.
Yeah.
I hate Facebook with everything in me. But, all of that to say, we had to make all these ground rules, and it's not like something where, like, if somebody checks their Twitter on a Saturday, we're like, you're the worst person in the world. But just personally for us, that's what we had to do to just kind of keep our heads clear and not get so burnt out on following other people's lives. And
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's very admirable. Respectable. Our last wrap-up question is, do you have any advice for your younger self?
Or your call center self.
Yeah, exactly.
Looking back, it's fun to look back and say, what would we have, if we'd been on the phone, or if we'd sat in person talking with ourselves, when we were a lot younger, what would we have said to be like, you can make it, or advice you would give?
I think looking back, what I needed to know at that time was that life is way bigger than what you do for a living. I was basing my self-worth off of what I was doing for a living at the time, and that's why I was so miserable working in a call center or working, in like my accounting type job. I was miserable because I was basing my self-worth off of what I was doing, kind of subconsciously forgetting the fact that I was a husband, forgetting the fact that I was a dad, forgetting the fact that I have a lot of really good friends and people that care for me and love me, and it made me miserable. So I think I would encourage my old self to look past what I'm doing for a living, because there are way bigger things in life than work. Because like I said, I mean, someday we're all gonna die. We're gonna be somewhere between, I don't know, people might live till we're like 300 by the time my generation dies. Yeah. I hope not. But eventually we'll all be laying on that deathbed, hopefully surrounded by like our families and stuff. And I want my kids and hopefully grandkids and great grandkids to remember me as being present and being just being kind of life-giving, rather than constantly worrying about how to make more money or get a better job or whatever the thing is. Yeah. Getting the wife and kids and house and dog and whatever else the American dream is.
That's neat. And we really appreciate you taking time. It was cool to kind of test out. We love the new mic, and it's been neat just to sit and talk to people face to face.
That's fun.
Skype is cool, but you just can't replace the real
This interview would have been a train wreck if I was talking on the phone with you guys. Partly because I live like 10 minutes away, but mostly because I'm just incredibly awkward on the phone.
Well, we'll give it a second shot.
Yeah, I know. I kind of want to get that side of Logan now.
But no, seriously, thanks for your time.
We really it was great, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yes, it was awesome. You can find Logan on Twitter at Logan Pyle, also on Instagram at Logan Pyle. And I'm actually going to give him a plug here real quick because I'm going to force him to make a plug because he did the logo for our show. He hand lettered the logo for our show, which is awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And actually, he is going to be hand lettering a INFJ shirt to celebrate the uniqueness and rarity that we are, which is going to be really cool.
Wesley on the air.
Nope. And he has a domain now, infjshirt.com. If you go there right now, it redirects to his Twitter, but hopefully by the time some of you listen to it, it'll redirect to the shirt where you can purchase it if you are an INFJ person or you want to celebrate our group of people. So yes, infjshirt.com. It's going to be awesome. And
no pressure.
Yes.
No pressure.
If you guys would review the podcast on iTunes, we would really, really, really appreciate it. It actually really does help people to find it, and just leave something nice. That would make my day. It would be awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please join us next time as we celebrate the spirit of the Midwest.
I wanna show you what we're going to